Hi, this is Ted. I have way too much information to talk about today, so I'm going to try to just bring this down. I'm just going to read off my notes and try not to get sidetracked in any way, shape, or form. If you look at Wikipedia under failed, what was it? I can't remember the title, but had to do with failed apocalyptic predictions. And they have 188 of them since the first century. What I'm looking for in all these 188 is, now, first of all, I haven't got anywhere near that. I have about 4 or 5 that I'm digging into and learning about. But I'm looking for patterns that are similar in all of them, and trying to see how those patterns fit in with the movement of prophets who said President Trump would become the next president in 2020, and that on the heels of that would be this tremendous revival. Because that is kind of how they felt, is that first Trump is going to be inaugurated again as president, then this tremendous revival will begin. That'll be kind of the sign of the tremendous revival that's happening and going to happen, but it never happened. So let me talk to you about the steps, or at least about the patterns that I'm seeing from other sources as well. Not just modern day 2020 election and stuff, but past prophecies that just didn't happen. All right, first of all, I do want to talk about there's always a crisis when people realize that their prophecies did not come to pass. This crisis is called cognitive dissonance. Leon Festinger is the one who coined that term, looking at and studying an alien cult, believing that aliens would come and take them away and protect them from an apocalyptic event happening to the world. One of the things that he presents is the more dedicated you are to whatever belief system it is, the harder it's going to be for you when it doesn't happen, and the more you're going to be needing to look for some way to solve the issue that is in front of you. And that issue is my belief system and everything I held dear is false. I can't deal with that. So how I look for a narrative, therefore, to explain why my event didn't happen and why I was right all along. But that's going to be tough if I said Jesus will return in 1844 and he doesn't return. Nevertheless, let's get on with this. And these are the things that we can get committed into, the things that draw us deeper into something. My reputation, the followers who follow me, listen to what I say, and I feel responsible for what I say. And so when I'm prophesying that something is going to happen, they are likewise being drawn up into that with me. And so I feel a responsibility to them that weighs heavily upon me, my peers, the entire movement I'm involved in, the mockers. Identity is at stake. I believe I'm a prophet. I'm special to God. And if I misprophesy, if I say something so important that doesn't happen, my whole calling is called into question. Me as a leader, even my walk with God, maybe I don't hear from God. That's what reality is trying to tell you. You're not hearing from God. You're hearing from something else. But I don't want to deal with that. I have to have everything from that whole past that I've been prophesying about that didn't happen. I need that to be true. It has to be true somehow to be able to save me and my ministry, my dignity, and everything else that comes along with it. Other people have given themselves over so much that they quit jobs. They quit relationships. They were laughed at. Their families put them down. All that kind of stuff. And all along they're thinking, one day you're going to be the ones laughing. Or I'm sorry, one day you won't be laughing. It's going to be us. And all this kind of stuff, it's all building up and just digging me deeper into whatever belief it is that I have about the future. So when it doesn't happen, I need a narrative to help explain stuff. Now, one such narrative, and we're seeing some of this going on with the prophets of today. One of the problems we're having as I'm looking for patterns with these prophets is there's so many. There are thousands of prophets who have said President Trump will be the next president and that the revival will come upon the heels of his inauguration. There's thousands of people who've said this. So it's so hard to dig into just one narrative. You're going to have several narratives going, and I think they're all being kind of formed today. They're being formed and reformed, and eventually there might be one or two narratives that kind of stand out above all the rest. And the first narrative, and one that people for some reason like to go to quickly, is you push out the date. The reason pushing out dates is so popular for these groups that predicted Jesus would come is that when I push out a date, it's the least that I have to sacrifice in dignity and everything, because the event is still true. But I just got the date wrong. Sorry, that's easy to get over. Jehovah's Witnesses pushed out their dates a lot, different dates. But the apocalyptic event coming to this world that they warn everybody against went from 1925, and when it didn't happen in 25, they said it'll happen in 1975. And when it didn't happen then they just kind of try to hope that it goes away. Harold Camping, he predicted in 2011 in May that Jesus was going to come back. It didn't happen. The rapture was going to happen. And it didn't happen. So he pushed out the dates 5 months. The Millerites said in 1843 Jesus was going to come back. It didn't happen, so they pushed it out 1 year. So if possible, find a narrative to help explain why I'm pushing out the date. For example, Harold Camping said he miscalculated in the scriptures about when Jesus was going to come back. So he gave him 5 more months before he realized even that was not correct. Bill Hammond, he argued that the reason President Trump wasn't elected is because there's a human part to prophecy. We didn't fulfill our part of it. And therefore, he's putting the blame on the people of God. Indirectly, he's putting the blame on the people of God. Ken Christmas says that God's people and Trump were being too self-centered in trying to grab the glory of God and just not living how they should be. But God is helping to prepare a people for 2024. Chris Yoon and many others claim the election was stolen, and it's just a matter of time before that is revealed and he'll be back in. Others say the election was stolen, but in 2024 he will be reelected. All these are pushing out dates. Now, Bill Hammond may not be pushing out date. He's just explaining why it didn't happen this time. I haven't heard what he has said about pushing out dates. But all these likewise, including Bill Hammond, are limiting God's power. Because they say the election was stolen. God did not want that. God's desire, God's purpose, God's plan was to put President Trump in there for this great revival. But it didn't happen. So what happened? God's power is limited. They blame Christians. One thing they don't blame, they'll blame Satan and the Democrats, of course. But one thing they're not blaming at all is themselves. You know, it's not stated, but they're thinking, I was faithful. I passed on the messages God told me to. So if it didn't work out, it's something it's his fault, and it's the people's fault. Now, they won't say it like that, but that's precisely, indirectly, what they are saying. That's the conclusion that you have to draw. Now, many of the prophets today are in this push the date era, in between the first failure and the second, probable failure. The reason I mention probable is because there is very possible a chance that Trump could make it back in the White House. This is not beyond reason. I think most, even secular thinkers would agree that that's within the realm of possibility. If Trump doesn't make it, however, in 2020, many of these people who are still pinning their hopes on a future date will have to come up with the narrative to explain and help them get over the hump and explain to themselves that I was right all along, even though reality says something different. Back in the 1950s, the seekers, the ones who believed the alien spaceship would come and save them, when they were out of push-out dates, they came to the conclusion that, well, I should say, the spaceship revealed to them that they saved the world because of the light in them and because of their excitement and because of their dedication. The Millerites, when they realized that it was not going to happen, when they realized that in 1844 Jesus didn't return, they came up with three different narratives. The first one was, in 1844, salvation was closed. That's it. That didn't become real popular. Others said, well, Jesus returned invisibly. That didn't take hold too well either. But the third group came up with one that really did take hold. Heaven's sanctuary was cleansed in preparation for Jesus to return. And that's what happened in 1844. Jehovah's Witnesses, they're trying to ignore it and just move on, pretend they had never prophesied things in the past. When narrative is found, any type of narrative, if it's good enough, the group is going to preach it boldly. They sometimes become stronger evangelists after the fact. And the book by Leon Festinger claims that they become so dedicated to evangelism because these groups want the support of others to say, we weren't wrong, we were right. They're looking for support all along. That's about it. So those are the kind of the patterns that I see in different groups, and I'm trying to push them into patterns of what's going on with the prophets. There's going to be a few differences, but I just wanted to look for that. All right, this time you all have a good day.